worst movies of the decade. Which ones pissed you off the most? Leave a comment, and my voice is starting to go out, so...
Well, asking you shall receive. Hey guys, Clayton here. Well, outside it's cold, it's raining, so what a better day to actually do the worst movies of the 2010 decade. Since we're now in the new decade of 2020, I thought it'd be a good thing to just reflect on the past decade, look at the best and worst of the 2010s. And I'm starting off with the worst because I want to get all this negative, stuff out of the way so I can at least be more energetic for the best. I have a list right here of movies from the 2010s that I didn't flat out like, and it's going to be in no particular order. I'm just going to go by the year. And also this is going to be unscripted, so if you see me stuttering or mumbling on my words, then I humbly apologize. And also, I think it goes without saying, if you like the movies I put on here, that is totally fine. You're not an idiot, you're not below me, you're not stupid, whatever have you. We're all different in our opinions of movies, and that's a good thing. So, let's just get this over with. These are my worst movies of the 2010 decade. Alright. Starting off in the 2010s, we have, I'm going to start off with the worst one, The Last Airbender. Now, I was a little late going into The Last Airbender. I didn't see it much as a kid, but a coworker let me borrow her copies, and I'm kicking myself for missing out on it, and even I got the complete series set along with Korra on Blu-ray for Christmas. And through my curiosity, I've heard how bad it was. It was free on Hulu, so I checked out The Last Airbender movie, and they were right. This movie is crap. It's one of the worst adaptations, frankly, I have ever seen. I think everyone said it best, the acting is terrible. The kids are just wooden. The main three are just wooden. The fighting scenes are, really, really slow. They do that whole, slow-mo thing, which, if you've seen the show, the action's, very fast. It's very, energetic. Now, if you get to someone like the guys who did Kingsman or Kick-Ass or even the John Wick movies, give it to those guys. They would have done a great job with Avatar, but this really didn't have much of the energy of the show. And speaking of that, it seemed like they sucked the fun out of the show. Because, the show can get serious, but this movie tries to go too serious. Because at least the show had bits of, comedy and, amongst the drama, they had comedy because the main characters were kids. And the show, can get serious when it needs to. This movie tries to take itself 100% seriously, and it just doesn't really work. However, as bad as this movie is, there are a few things I do like. For instance, the production design, the costumes I thought were pretty good. The score, though it's nothing like the show, I thought was really good. If there's one thing they did get right, outside of other things they got wrong, Appa and Momo were actually done faithfully in this than they were than the other characters. And also, Dave Patel, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but it's the guy who plays Uncle Iroh, or Ero, sorry, name mispronunciations too, that's ridiculous. But, they were good. And it's mainly because Uncle Iroh is my favorite character in the show, but I think they got him right too, and the actors do a good job. And Dave Patel is also Zuko. But other than that, there's a reason why this is considered one of the worst adaptations of a cartoon, and probably M. Night Shyamalan's worst movie. He's gotten better, I'll give him that, with movies like The Visit, Split, and hell, I'll even give Glass a pass. But this was just a low one for him. Alright, next up, we got a really bad family comedy, Furry Vengeance. I feel so bad for Brendan Fraser. I have heard he outright admits he's ashamed of this movie. And honestly, I don't blame the guy, because the movie doesn't really have much in terms of story, but it's mostly focused on the jokes regarding the animals messing with Brendan Fraser. And here's the thing, Brendan Fraser's not to blame. I give the guy credit for at least he's trying. Like, there's a scene where after he gets skunked and he's taking a tomato bath, the animal steals his clothes, and so he has to wear his wife's like really tight pink tracksuit, and like it's up to his gut, and you can kind of tell he's gained a bit of weight. And as embarrassing as lowbrow as it was, he's at least like being brave enough to do it, which I commend him for. Just the rest of the jokes, like, okay, speaking of the animals, these suckers are vicious. I mean, the whole movie is supposed to be like, you know, pro-environmental, and you could do it if it's done right. I mean, look at Wall-E. But this is one where it says, like, hey, protect the, like, you know, protect the environment, be nice to animals, or they'll tend to kill you. Okay, like, in the beginning, they go after Rob Riggle in his truck. Like, they set up these, like, Rube Goldberg machines by, like, getting a rock down to hit his car. And it's over a cliff, and then the raccoon does that whole, like, blow thing. Like, he blows on it, so the truck goes down the cliff. It's like, if they didn't add that ADR of Rob Riggle, he should be dead. Like, geez. And even, like, there's even parts where Brendan Fraser should have been dead from all the stuff the animals are doing. Like, if you thought Harry and Marv were invincible in Home Alone 2, then this is one of them, man. Like, this is another one in the case. But also it has one of the most hilariously bad product placements I've ever seen in a movie. Now, I don't have my original box for my Nintendo Wii, but I'll use this as an example. He's talking to Brooke Shields' wife and his son about the job opportunity he has. And he straight up, like, just out of nowhere goes, like, speaking of money, who wants a new Nintendo Wii? Like, yeah, just imagine this being the Wii box. He's, like, holding it like that. And it's so bad that even the son just randomly, he just screams and goes, like, ah! Like, just what the hell, man? Ken Jeong, I'll at least give credit, like, he's actually kind of funny as his boss, as Brendan Fraser's boss, but I will say this, though, there is a far worse movie on this worst of that Ken Jeong's in that's actually worse than Furry Vengeance, because at the end of the day, this movie's just forgettable. I mean, it's not funny, and it's bad, but it's just something you'll forget about at the end of the day. Oh boy, next up we got some bad romance here. We have The Last Song. Now, I haven't really watched much of the Nicholas Sparks, like, romance movies. Like, I haven't seen The Notebook. I kind of remember watching a bit of Dear John. But all the ones I've seen, this one's probably the worst. It's so, like, it's very much like your cliched romance of, like, you have the main character, Miley Cyrus, who, like, you know, she's a bad kid who somehow she'll find love on the beach. Then something tragic's gonna happen. A person that she loves dies. It's just paint by the numbers, like your crappy romance stuff you would see on, like, a soap opera. Now, not saying anything bad about Miley Cyrus, like, I was fine with, like, the Hannah Montana stuff, and not to make jokes about her, like, crazed drug stuff, like, all the stuff, like, twerking on Robin Thicke, but she is terrible in this movie. Like, all she does is, like, sneer and snark. She's kind of unlikable, too. Like, you just wonder, like, why are you even here? Like, why are you putting up with it? Like, why is Greg Kinnear putting up with all this? But it's... Now, there's another melodrama romance movie I haven't seen called Remember Me, and I hear that's, like, actually way worse than this. I haven't seen it yet, but so far for me, The Last Song is probably up there for one of the worst romance movies I've seen. Alright, this came out in 2010. This guy, now, some would say this is a direct-to-TV movie here in America, though it got released somewhere in other parts of the world. And I'm putting all three of them here because they're all from this decade, the Fred trilogy. There was a time when I was younger, I used to like Fred. Me and my sister used to like Fred. But watching the movies, all I have to say is, I'm just keeping thinking, what was so funny about him? Like, the first movie is, I think many people say it's a very dire version of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where Fred, he's going to look for Judy, and, like, crazy shenanigans happen. The thing is just, it's not funny, and it's not really much of a plot, just a series of comedic moments and just random song numbers that just come out of nowhere. Fred is just, like, he doesn't have the high-pitched, like, chipmunk voice that he had in his videos. It just sounds like Lucas Cruikshank going through puberty. And it's, sorry, it's just not a funny movie. The only good thing I can definitely say is John Cena plays his dad, and he's at least trying. Like, he actually does deliver some funny moments in there. And there is a funny scene where Fred has a dream about his dad coming to help him find Judy, and while looking through, like, some sort of video or whatever, it just cuts to an episode, like, it just shows an episode of Dora, and he goes, "That's classified." Like, that was actually funny. And almost this whole movie where it's just not. And then we get to Fred 2, which I'll give credit is slightly better than the first. Like, this one actually does have a plot. It has the same problems as the first Fred movie, but, like, you know, it's not funny, just random dream sequences and everything else. But this one at least has somewhat of a story. And also, I'll give credit, the ending was actually kind of good. And as for Fred 3, Camp Fred, I'm debating whether or not this is better or, like, that this is actually worse than the first, because it's pretty much your stereotypical camp, like, it's up there with something like Daddy Date Camp and how bad it is. And the same problems with the other ones, like, annoying, not funny. John Cena's barely in the movie, where in the other two, he was at least the best part of them. Here, he's only there for one scene and he's gone. It's just like, wow, you can't even make the John Cena scenes any good. But overall, like, the Fred movies are some of the worst movies based on YouTubers that I've ever seen. Now, I haven't seen a lot. I mean, like, the closest one I have is the Smosh movie, and that wasn't good either, but it at least was better put together than, say, the Fred movies. Alright, moving on to 2011, and I'm starting off again with the worst one, Jack and Jill. Now, in terms of the Happy Madison movies of this year, I haven't seen Bucky Larson, and honestly, I can't get past it, like, just go with it, but of the ones I've seen, this is one of Adam Sandler's worst. And I don't hate Adam Sandler. I think he can be funny if given the right stuff to do. I like his early movies. Like, I like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, The Waterboy, even something like Click. And even some of his newer ones, like, there's a reason why, like, I would kind of openly defend Pixels, and I unironically really like the Hotel Transylvania movies. And I haven't seen Uncut Gems still, but of the movies of this decade, this and another movie coming up are his absolute worst. The biggest problem I have with Jack and Jill is that it's just annoying. Like, you have two Adam Sandlers. One of them is just your normal, like, jerk Adam Sandler, you know, just like him being a jerk. And then you have another Adam Sandler doing his annoying Jewish, like, doing an annoying, very, like, stereotypical Jewish impression of a Jewish woman. Like, I know he's Jewish, but it's like they're really pushing it in this movie. But it is so, like, Jill is just so grating. Like, it's up there, like, in terms of annoying voices, like Whitey from 8 Crazy Nights. It's just, ugh. The thing is also that Jill is just not that, like, and she is not a really fun or likable character. Like, she is obnoxious. She is, like, I mentioned she's annoying. I don't know, she's also, like, gets up in everyone's business. She is overly sensitive over stupid stuff. Is just, ugh. The one thing that kind of is a little bit funny is Al Pacino. Like, he's at least somewhat trying, but then he decided on to do stupid stuff like curl up on Jill's sweatshirt. Just, ew. Don't get me started on also, like, the celebrity cameos. You got Johnny Depp in a Justin Bieber shirt, which is just, why is he here? Dana Carvey, man, like, after not seeing him since Master of Disguise, it's like, really, he dragged him up for this in a movie that's kind of arguably worse than The Master of Disguise? And then you get some really uncomfortable ones like Jared from Subway, or even Vince Offer, who made a movie far worse than this, which we'll get to. And the product placement. Adam Sandler's movies usually have some product placement in it, like very blatant product placement. But this is overboard. Like, because he's an ad executive, it is overboard with the product placement in this movie. Yeah, just Jack and Jill is just one of Adam Sandler's worst. Alright, and then next up we have another crappy romance, Beastly. If y'all thought Disney's live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast was bad, you have not seen this. Like, I'll at least give that movie, the live-action Beauty and the Beast, credit that at least try to be somewhat faithful to the animated version, even if it was shot for shot. This is basically Beauty and the Beast if it was done by the people who made Twilight. And I know this is based on a book. I haven't read the book, but the thing is like, the dude is trying to pass off like, oh, he's so ugly. Here's the thing. He's bald. And he has like these magic tree tattoos. Like, okay, Mary-Kate Olsen plays a witch and casts the spell on him. And unlike in, say, Beauty and the Beast where he turns into this like big hairy monster, he's bald and he's given this like tree tattoo and like metal stud. It's like, dude, you're not that ugly. Or even like, there's even points in the movie where he's with his shirt off, well, he has his shirt off, and it's like, you're built like a house. You're not even that ugly. And also, Vanessa Hudgens in this movie is, which she's supposed to be the nice girl who wants to help, but she's just as shallow as he is. Like, I get you're trying to help him, but you're coming off kind of shallow in some points of this movie. And the thing is, like, both her and the guy, Alex Pettyfer is his name, and they don't really have that good of chemistry together. Like, their acting is not bad. Like, Vanessa Hudgens is gorgeous, and she can sing, but my God, like, she is not really good in this. Like, she is, ooh. It doesn't even help her. Like, even someone like Neil Patrick Harris was not really given much direction. He's supposed to be blind. And there's parts where he's looking, like, right at the guy, and then later he has to look out somewhere like, oh, wait, I'm blind. Like, did the director just forget that he's supposed to be blind? And the whole is just pretty much like the Twilight movies. It's just a boring, like, drawn-out movie that, like, even they had this montage of him living in this house that his dad got for him so he can hide out. And it's just nothing but him just standing around there, and also text messages from his dad. It's just, what's even the point of the montage then? Just to show time has passed? Just, Beastly is just another one of the Twilight clones, because this was around the time that Twilight was a huge thing. And they try to make certain things very Twilight-like, like this, and another one, Red Riding Hood, which I haven't seen. And I heard that one's bad too, but Beastly is certainly one that really I would not recommend it. Now this one's going to be kind of quick, because I haven't seen it ever since I saw it in the theaters, which I just remember not really liking Bad Teacher. The movie itself is just, I think my biggest problem when seeing it is just, it's not funny. Like, I just don't think the movie is that funny. They try to attempt with some humor, but I just didn't really find it funny. Cameron Diaz, I'll give credit, like, she's good in the role, but, like, that doesn't really say much, because, honestly, the movie just kind of falls flat on certain things. Like, okay, she's supposed to be, like, the whole thing is that she's a terrible teacher, and that's supposed to be the joke. But even, like, other stuff she does, like, she doesn't really get away with how cynical her attitude is. Like, she doesn't really grow throughout the movie. I mean, the closest she does is at the end, where she realizes, like, she ends up with Jason Segel at the end, and other than that, it's just, really, do you really grow throughout this movie? It's been a while since I've watched it ever again, and haven't really touched it since, but I just remember it, like, not leaving an impact on me. It's just not funny. Alright, moving on to 2012, we have one of the worst, I even will say this, not only is this one of the worst found footage movies I've seen, but one of the worst movies I have ever sat through, The Devil Inside. Whew, boy, like, this capsulizes, like, what a lot of people criticize the found footage genre for. Like, because ever since it got popular with Paranormal Activity, we've had some good ones, like Paranormal Activity 3, Chronicle, even some like this, like even Project X I actually kind of like to an extent. But The Devil Inside, the biggest problem with that is that it's a whole, like, the whole movie, like, up until, like, something actually does happen at the end, is nothing but boring, just they're talking about exorcisms, but it's very drawn out and just very not interesting to discuss. And the movie is trying to pass it off like this is the movie the Vatican doesn't want you to see. And, well, it certainly feels like it. But the acting is fine, with the exception of the mom. The mom who's supposed to be possessed in the movie is so over the top with, like, doing these random voices and trying to act possessed. She acts like one of those, like, haunted houses that, like, people put up in their house, and you get actors to do, like, these over-the-top possession things just to scare people who pass by. Speaking of scares, though, the jump scares in this movie, it is, ugh. The biggest, like, one example is that you have the main woman the two priests and the cameraman are walking down the street to to an exorcism. And there's out of nowhere this big dog just jumps up from the fence and barks at them, like really loudly. And that was supposed to startle the audience, and that just was just a cheap way just to scare the audience. And then there's the ending. The ending is probably the biggest middle finger to anyone who is trying to get invested in this, because it felt like it was very slapped together at the last minute, and just stops when it starts getting interesting. I think you've already heard it, but for those who haven't heard, spoilers. The main girl gets possessed after one of the priests ends up killing himself because he was possessed too. And on their way to the church, Isabel's the girl's name. Her possessed voice says, like, one of the priests asks, "Who are you?" And she goes, "You know me. Everyone knows who I am." Which may have hinted that she is possessed by the devil himself. And it's like, okay, this is getting interesting. We're actually going to see something happen. But then she attacks the driver, who was the cameraman, and he ends up getting possessed. He unbuckles his seatbelt, puts the pedal to the metal, and like zooms in to like an oncoming vehicle, and they crash. Now, I've heard people say like Isabella's body's not even there, like right when they show the aftermath of the crash. But the cameraman and the priest are dead. Cuts to black. It says, this mystery has remained unresolved. And another thing says, for more information, go to this website to find out more. And then roll credits. I remember seeing this movie when it came out in theaters, and I remember the entire audience behind us were just mad. Like, they were upset. And for good reason, because you can't leave audiences like that, because it felt like the movie didn't have that much of an ending. And you know your movie's bad when you made the audience all mad, like all flustered over it. Alright, next up we have one that I just recently got around to. I heard was bad, but yeah, certainly is 1,000 Words. Now, in terms of Eddie Murphy comedies, this isn't as annoying as, say, Norbit. And while I haven't seen Dolomite Is My Name, I hear he's really good in that one too. It's just, the biggest problem is that the movie takes away one of Eddie Murphy's like best qualities to him, like his voice. Like his snide comments are what makes him funny. And him trying to do like very silent, like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin comedy just didn't work. And it just comes off very contrived, like especially parts where he's like, he goes to work even though he can't talk because if the leaves fall, he'll end up dying. And why would you even go to work? Like, I think Cinematic Excrement pointed this out, that one word would have like sufficed all this, like, because no one will question it. Diarrhea. Like, no one questions it, so why doesn't he use that excuse is beyond me. But even then, also the rules for the tree don't make any sense. Like, he'll talk and the leaves will fall. Okay? Then he tries writing his wife a note, the leaves fall when he writes words. Or even when he when he flips off the tree, that counts as well. Well, near the end of near close to the third act of the movie, he tells his assistant, like, through pictures of what will happen, and yet somehow that doesn't count. It's like, make up your mind, you dumb tree. Now, as bad as this is, I will give it this. The last 30 to so minutes when he's trying to fix everything with his life and forgive his dad, that's when the movie actually kind of gets good. It's a little too late, but it actually works, and Eddie Murphy does give a really good performance throughout, and it's actually kind of heartbreaking. It reminds me a bit of like the ending of Click, where at first you start off with a kind of mean-spirited Adam Sandler comedy, but then the second half kind of goes into a very dark, kind of dramatic movie. But I honestly think like this is a little worse because you have Eddie Murphy doing something that doesn't really show off his comedic chops. If anything, I could recommend just watch a similar movie. Just watch Liar Liar instead. Now this one is straight to video, but I still kind of count it as a movie. Like, I still count direct-to-video movies as movies regardless. That would be The Amazing Bulk. Wow. This is a movie that tries to be like one of those, oh, we are so intentionally bad, like to poke fun of itself. Kind of like in a similar vein to something like Jack Frost 2, but I don't really think it works. It doesn't really work as a parody. Like, the whole movie's supposed to be a parody of The Incredible Hulk. And it doesn't really work that much because it follows the same beat as your usual Hulk story, like, guy experiments on himself, he becomes this big monster, and he's being harassed by this military guy, like, you know, similar stuff. But the oddest thing about it, like, the whole movie's filmed on a green screen, and while most movies are done that today, I mean, but some can be done really well. Like, look at Jon Favreau's Jungle Book, where the whole movie was filmed on a blue screen to make you feel like you're in the jungle, and it works. But the whole thing with this is that they use stock footage that you could purchase online, and some of the stuff just doesn't make any sense. Like, the main guy is going to the bad guy's headquarters, and he passes by a golf course, a leprechaun with a pot of gold, among many other, like, random assortment of imagery. It just doesn't make sense. Not to mention, like, as odd as that was, the effect for the Bulk is just so cheap. He looks like a naked fusion of Grimace and a fat dude and Grimace. And it just looks unnatural, especially the way he runs. It's just unnatural. However, there's also scenes that just go on for, like, quite a long time, like the main villain destroying satellites or something like that goes on for what feels like an eternity. However, it is kind of worth it, though, just for one particular scene, and that you can find it on YouTube. It's called, like, the greatest chase scene in history or something like that, and it is just one of the most insane chase scenes or something like that. It sets the Williams Hall Overture, and they use all the stock footage they can just to, like, pad it out with the animation of the Bulk running, including stuff like Zeus, the Red Baron, a gecko typing on a laptop, and even ending with a nuke being dropped, featuring, like, and on that said nuke is some guy who looks like General Luigi from the Mario games. It's just, I almost kind of recommend it to the So Bad It's Good crowd. I didn't find it that funny, like a So Bad It's Good funny, but it's just so incompetently made. I just question why was it even made in the first place, and I don't like doing that. Alright, moving on to 2013. I put these two together because they are both similar, though I do think one is actually way worse. Movie 43, an inappropriate comedy, or an app-appropriate comedy. The biggest problem with both these movies is that they try to be like the next anthology comedy, like something like Kentucky Fried Movie. But they fail on the basic level of, like, just that the jokes do not work. And both have a similar problem, just being, like, done in poor taste, or even, like, for shock value, and they fail on that level. Like, now, I have nothing, I think I said before, I have nothing against shock value. One of my favorite movies of 2019 was Jojo Rabbit. And part of that movie does have a bit of shock to it, but was hindered by a heartfelt story and a message behind it. These are just none but just poorly done jokes with just, they just don't hit, they just don't land correctly. But what makes inappropriate comedy a lot worse is that these, like, they are just offensive. Like, movie 43 is offensive on that level that just wasn't funny. Inappropriate comedy is just straight up offensive. Like, probably one of the most infamous sketches is The Amazing Racist, and which this guy goes about trying to make, like, all these racist, like, accusations, like he's teaching Asian people how to drive and doing stuff like taping their eyes open or asking them to stop the car because there's a dog for them to eat, or trying to give black people a boat trip back to Africa and luring them with fried chicken and watermelon and basketball, or even going to a Jewish supermarket dressed as a priest, even though he's technically Jewish, having them sign a petition to apologize for killing Jesus. It's just like, and the thing is he's trying to be like Sacha Baron Cohen, what he did with Borat. But the thing with Borat is that those were actually, like, filmed, like, secretly. Like, those were actually genuine reactions. This has much clearer camera, and this actually feels like actors trying to act all shocked and offended. The closest thing that actually did get a genuine reaction was during the boat trip scene, where one of the black guys actually attacks him and beats the crap out of him. And his only response is pretty much, "It's just a prank, bro." Like, you don't get that excuse just to say, "It's just a prank." Like, what you're doing is actually offensive. Like, movie 43, like, as bad as that movie is, that at least got one little laugh out of me, which was the whole children and machines thing, which was kind of funny, even if the rest of the movie wasn't, and going for like really low-hanging fruit. But inappropriate comedy, I think, is, like I said, inappropriate comedy is worse, because I think I found that one more offensive. Both are not funny, and I wouldn't recommend them, but I would definitely steer away from inappropriate comedy a lot more than that. Next up would have to be R.I.P.D, or Rest in Peace Department. Now, with this one, I haven't read the comic it's based on, but watching the movie, I'm wondering if it's even as good. The comics are even good. The biggest problem with the movie is that, for starters, it's boring. It's not really that interesting to begin with. But the idea, as cool as, like, you have people who died, who worked in, like, some sort of justice. Like, you know, they worked for the police force, they were the sheriff or something like that. And you have them work together to bring back souls who have escaped purgatory. Like, that's actually a creative idea, but the thing is, they don't really give it that much of a sense of urgency. Considering these characters are dead, and they're taking the guise of other people, when they get hurt, like, there's no, like, they were able to walk it off fine. It works with something like Deadpool, because he's self-aware, and that it's done for more comedic value. And not only the comedy in R.I.P.D. is just not funny, the thing is that when they get hurt, they just walk it off. I mean, I get they're dead, but at least a little urgency, or at least a little bit of peril could work to kind of explain, like, you know, what would happen if they actually die again. But another big problem is that, because this is a movie that's trying to be kind of like the next Men in Black, what worked in that movie was Agent J and K's chemistry. Both Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith worked off each other. Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges don't. Like, their chemistry is almost non-existent. And they, most of the time, just, I mean, the most thing is just as your generic, they don't get along at first, but they'll eventually learn to at the end. And you don't really feel that sense of, like, friendship happening. Like, you get what I'm saying? It's just, like, the chemistry is not there. R.I.P.D, if they try rebooting this again sometime in the future, maybe they can do better. But other than that, it's just not a good movie. And finally, for 2013, we have Escape from Tomorrow. This is a movie that's just, I hate using the word because it is overused, it's just pretentious. Like, this movie is so full of itself, it thinks it's trying to say something, like, big and important about Disney. It feels like one of those movies made by those people who complain a lot on Twitter about, oh, like, you know, I hate Disney nowadays. All they do is, like, the remakes and the sequel, go back to original, like, that crap. It feels like that, but at the same time it doesn't, because it kind of misses the point. It's like, yeah, they're attacking Disney, like, for the whole Disneyland trying to escape from your troubles and stuff. But some parts also attack Siemens, the people who sponsor Epcot or Spaceship Earth. It's like, who's the bad guy in all this? Not only that, the movie, like, it has very unlikable characters. Jim is just perverted, he cheats on his wife, he's a stalker, pretty much, over these preteen French girls. It's just like, what are we supposed to root for him for? Like, just because he likes one of his kids? It's just like, that's not really much of an excuse. The wife is just a shrew. The kids are practically nothing, and another thing is, like, also that it tries too hard. Like, it tries too hard to be, like, this artsy, like, like, it is supposed to be an art house movie, but it tries way too hard to have, like, this very disturbing sort of imagery that happens when they're on, like, a ride or something like that. And it's just not that engaging. It's not really scary. The green screen, there's times when, because the whole movie is infamous for being shot at Disney World guerrilla style, and there's parts where they couldn't shoot at the park, and they use obvious green screen, which is so obvious that they shot on the green screen. Like, there's a moment where a character explains her backstory as a princess. The green screen on it is so terrible. Like, you can obviously, like, it's not one of those where you can see the matte lines. Even if the movie's done in black and white, you can obviously tell it's on a green screen. Again, I don't like saying stuff like this, but, like, Escape from Tomorrow is just so full of itself. It's so pretentious that, like, you're trying to say something that's important, but really it just comes off like you're just trying too hard. Alright, going on to 2014, we have The Legend of Hercules. Now, there's something you should know about me. I love Greek mythology. Love the gods, the heroes, the monsters. All that stuff is just fascinating to me. The Legend of Hercules is one of the worst Greek mythology movies I have ever seen. And this is the reason why I can't get mad at something like, say, Hercules, directed by Brett Ratner, starring Dwayne Johnson. I can't get mad at that. What I can get mad at about this is that it is so cheap. Like, the costumes don't look as rugged or, like, dirty or something like you would see out of, like, this kind of time period. Or even, like, some of the effects are cheap. Like, some of the CG is pretty bad. Like, the Nemean lion at the beginning looks so fake. Or even stuff like, even again, going back to obvious green screen, where a character has run away from something and she looks behind them and you can clearly tell that it's shot on a green screen. And something else brought up is that a guy gets shot with a spear and he does the whole trick of tucking it under his arm to make it look like it hit him. But instead of shooting it like that, where you can kind of not tell he's being shot by the spear, it's shot like this, where you can clearly tell it's underneath his arm like this. Other than that, the acting is just all around. Like, you go from, like, bland, terrible acting from Kellen Lutz to over-the-top acting from the guy who plays the king in the movie. He is so over the top. He yells at everything like this. Like, he's just like, he is just so over something. Like, and also the action tries to do that whole 300 thing where it slows down and speeds up. Now, why I think it kind of worked in 300 is because 300 is based on a comic book, and they try to replicate the panels from said comic. Whereas this is just doing it because they thought it would look cool. But around this time, it just got tiring. Legend of Hercules is definitely one, like I said, it's just one. This is another reason why I can't get mad at something like, say, the remake of Clash of the Titans, or even Wrath of the Titans. Because those at least tried, compared to this. Alright, moving on for that, we have Sex Tape. From the guy who also did Bad Teacher, which, okay, he's directed some comedies I really like. He did Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. He also did Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Still haven't seen The Next Level, but I heard that was funny too. This was one of the worst ones he's done, and it's even surprising to know that Jason Segel and Nicholas Stoller wrote this, and Nicholas Stoller has written some really good comedies. Like, he did Neighbors 1 and 2, which I think are hilarious. And he also did some really good family movies, like him and Jason Segel did the 2011 Muppet movie, which I really like. He also did Captain Underpants, which I think is kind of overlooked. He did Storks, which I think is underrated. This was kind of a low one for him, honestly. The movie, like, you have these two who, you know, to spice up their sex life, they try to make a sex tape, and they accidentally send it to their family and friends and stuff. And so they try to, like, get it out from them. What follows is just a whole hour and a half full of unfunny shenanigans, and that's the biggest thing. It's just not funny. I mean, Jason Segel, I think he can be really funny. He just wasn't funny. Cameron Diaz is just being Cameron Diaz, and she's hot. I mean, don't get me wrong, she is gorgeous. But she is trying her hardest to carry this film. She looks like she's having fun. The thing is, like, they're really not given much to do, and here's the thing, they're supposed to be smart. Like, they were set up in the beginning as smart people, but when they're trying to get this sex tape away from their family and friends, they just turn stupid. Like, they are just rock stupid. Not only that, it's surprising even for a Sony movie that they have product placement for Apple. Like, because the whole movie is just a thing for the iPad. Which is, like, did you get funding rights for Apple for this? Just, anyway, Sex Tape is just another bad, like, R-rated comedy, which R-rated comedies can be funny. Like, even some more nowadays that can be really funny. This was just not one of them. Though, speaking of R-rated comedies that don't try, and this one actually is worse than Sex Tape, A Haunted House 2. Now, I don't hate Marlon Wayans. He can be funny, and he can be a really good actor. And I'll admit, I like the first Haunted House as a dumb, guilty pleasure. This is just the first movie, except far, far worse. It does the same thing, like kind of with the first one, where it pokes fun of Paranormal Activity, and other more current horror movies. Like, you know, in this one they have The Conjuring, or Sinister, The Possession, stuff like that. But the biggest problem with the jokes is that not only are they, like, so stretched out, like, some of the jokes go on for, like, much longer than they are. they are so childish. Like, it is such childish humor. The movie's rated R, but it's done for the most immature, like, ways possible. Like, I'm not gonna say, like, I'm below this, because I can laugh at immature humor. Like, I like Beavis and Butthead. Like, I'm no prude. But if you stretch it out for as long as this movie does, where it goes on for 2 months, but it feels like 5, then you know you've got a problem. It is just a low point. Like, Marlon Wayans has another movie coming up later. Like, you know what? In fact, I'll go right ahead and say it. 50 Shades of Black, which is another just bad comedy from him. Like, I think even Nordy pointed this out, that this movie is just straight up mean-spirited towards the Anastasia Steele character, where they kept going on like how ugly she is when she's really not. But, and this comes from someone who's never seen any of the 50 Shades movies, and I don't know if I ever will, but this was just, again, like much like a Haunted House 2, is just really obvious, awful comedy, very outdated ones too. Like, there's a whole sequence where it makes fun of Magic Mike, like a whole Magic Mike reference, or even a reference to Whiplash, with the late great Florence Henderson appearing in it as probably her final role. Both movies are really bad, and Marlon Wayans has, like, okay, he's done another one called Naked, which I didn't like that one either, but it was slightly better done than these two movies were. And I haven't seen Sextuplets, which I heard that one's bad too, but if anything, I hope it's better than just A Haunted House 2 or 50 Shades of Black. Moving on, we're into bad horror territory, Ouija. Now, I had a friend who was a manager at a movie theater around where I live, and he would see movies before they would even come out, and I asked him one time, what was the worst one he's seen? And he told me Ouija. And I didn't believe it at first, but when I saw the sequels coming out, I gave the first one a watch. This movie is ass. Like, it is awful. The whole thing about it is that it's the same, like, dumb characters doing dumb things. Really obvious, like, jump scares. Like, a lot of jump scares. Dull. Incredibly dull. A lot of horror movies tend to be boring when they're not really scary. And it's just... I'm glad the sequel is so much better. Like, it is actually a legit scary movie. But, wow, what a terrible movie to start out with, I guess. Alright, moving on to 2015, we have another terrible Adam Sandler comedy I mentioned, The Ridiculous Six. In terms of the Adam Sandler movies on Netflix, I haven't seen a lot of them. I've heard some are just as bad as this, and hell, I heard one of them was really good. But this one, I feel, is up there with Jack and Jill as one of his worst. This is a movie this is supposed to be a comedy western that makes A Million Ways to Die in the West look like Blazing Saddles. And I actually like A Million Ways to Die in the West, but the problem is that you have the most again, with Haunted House 2, it is childish. You get some of the most childish jokes from Adam Sandler, which is territory for him, but it's just so unfunny. Adam Sandler's character is practically a Gary Stu. Like, he can do, like, all this amazing stuff, which, like, why can't you do all this stuff to save the day at the end? But then you get the other ones, like, oh, poor Taylor Lautner, man. Like, you start with Promise. Like, he started off with a promising career for him, but here he is embarrassing himself playing this dumb hillbilly. Terry Crews, I'll give credit. He's at least somewhat trying. And then you get other people, Rob Schneider playing this Mexican. Freaking Vanilla Ice playing Mark Twain, doing his usual rap shtick is just, it's bad. Like, it is really bad. And also, like, one thing I didn't bring up when I put this as number 1 in my worst, it is 2 hours long. And a 2 hour long comedy can't work if the jokes are still fresh and funny. I mean, look at something like Ted, which is nearly 2 hours, and I think that movie's really funny. But this is just a collection of unfunny humor, just obvious childish jokes, and it's all around just a pretty poor. And, like, this is the reason I would slightly defend Pixels as an Adam Sandler movie. Like, it's between this and another one in 2015, Paul Blart 2, which I don't have on here, but I'm just thinking, like, who really asked for a Paul Blart 2? It's just a mess. Alright, next up is another one I recently saw, Jem and the Holograms. Now, I haven't seen the cartoon, and I've seen videos about the cartoon, and I can definitely understand. Like, this is the Last Airbender for Jem fans, because this was just pathetic. It's your basic rags to riches musical artist storyline, but the thing is that the movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It wants to be that, but at the same time wants to be kind of like the cartoon and have a sci-fi edge to it when they bring in synergy, which then later becomes a heist movie, like a treasure hunt. And the thing is like, it's just very drab. It's very bland. The only thing I can say that's somewhat positive is that the actresses who play the main girls is like, even though their characters are nothing really special, they at least try. Audrey Peoples, her character isn't really that interesting as Jem. The only good thing I say is that she can sing. She's really good. And that the thing is like, even though they're trying their best, it's just the script is giving them nothing to do or nothing to work with that's interesting. And not to mention the random YouTube clips they put in there just for no reason, which I hope the people who upload those gave them like at least some sort of compensation for putting those in there. Or even worse, what the filmmakers did to the clips of Gem fans and working it around to make it talk about the movie Gem, or even reworking interview clips from people like Jimmy Kimmel, Alicia Keys, and even, most embarrassingly, Chris Pratt. It's disgusting. Like, it is just, that sinks to a low, even for something like this. It's up there with Last Airbender being one of the worst cartoon adaptations. It is that bad. But speaking of one of the worst adaptations, here's a comic book adaptation in a decade when comic book movies actually got really good. Fantastic Four or Fant4stic. Wow. Like, you have to try. Like, here's the thing. I want a Fantastic Four movie to be good. Like, I have a soft spot for the Tim Story ones. And I actually think they're better than this. It's like, I'm all for like a much darker interpretation, but you gotta line up certain things about it, because this movie is so boring. It is so drab that it gave me very little reason to care. Like, even the Four, it's like, they're called the first family of comics for a reason, because they have the dynamic of a family. In this movie, there's no dynamic between them. Like, they're barely a team, and they become a team, like, right at the very end, when we only got the one action scene, just one. Like, there's no action throughout. Like, I'm not expecting suddenly, non-stop action, but you gotta at least give some action in there that's at least, like, something to balance out the melodrama and stuff. Not only that, like, man, they did Dr. Doom wrong in this. Like, he looks like a radioactive crash test dummy. The effects for The Thing and the Human Torch were pretty good, I'll give them that, but Reed's stretching powers were terrible. There's a reason, like, even before the movie came out, the director Josh Trank, who did a really good movie, Chronicle, quickly disowned it. And for good reason. Like, I am hoping he gets back to doing movies again, because it's not really, like, with all the stuff that went on between him, I hope he gets better. But Fantastic Four was just one big misfire that could have worked, and there's a part of me that's glad that Disney owns Fox, so we can finally get that good Fantastic Four movie that isn't The Incredibles or The Incredibles 2. Alright, then ending on 2015, we have the worst horror movie that year, The Gallows. The best way I can describe this movie is that you have an interesting premise about kids who go into a high school, like, late at night to tear up something for a play, but are haunted by something, like a ghost in the school, which I actually think could make a pretty good horror premise. The problem, however, is that you gave me very little reason to care about these kids. If you thought the main cast of Unfriended was so unlikable, at least that movie had a purpose, which is like, you're getting these bad kids, like, their comeuppance, they're getting what they're deserving. The main camera guy in this makes those characters from Unfriended look like good saints in comparison. Like, he is so obnoxious, he's rude, he is just annoying. Like, this is the kind of person I hated in high school, like those kind of people. And he is the embodiment of all that. I mean, other than that, the other three characters are just bland. Again, going back to what I said about Ouija, it just falls into traditional jump scares. Like they have stuff like that falls over and that jumps you. Or even worse, the camera's pointing to a wall at one point before they sneak into the school, and the camera guy just, like, fake jumps at you. It's just like, really, dude, are you serious? And then there's the ending, which I'll give credit, like, it has somewhat of a decent idea for a twist, But in the long scheme of things, it doesn't make any sense when you really think back to it. I've talked about the sequel in my worst of 2019. It's slightly better. Like, the main character is a lot more likable than the camera guy. But it's still not good, but it wouldn't make my worst of the decade. But I have some friends who do like the Gallows, and if you do, that's perfectly fine. It just wasn't for me. Alright, now we move on to 2016. I've talked about 50 Shades of Black when I talked about Haunted House 2, so we're going to skip that. Let's talk about one of the worst animated movies of this decade, Norm of the North. A movie that looks so direct-to-video, and yet got a theatrical release for some reason. Like, how'd that happen? The whole thing, this is the movie I mentioned that Ken Jeong's in this, voicing the villain. And this is a movie that's actually worse than Furry Vengeance, because with Furry Vengeance, it at least tried to have a whole message about the environment. This one has a really stupid one. Like, he wants to build condos in the Arctic. Why would someone agree to that? It does fall into the traditional, like, dumb family movie stuff. Like, you got your fart jokes, you got your toilet humor, you got... The movie's just dull. It's just not really that fun. The Lemmings are practically the Minions. This comes from someone who actually tolerates the Minions, and I actually didn't hate the Minion movie. But these guys are so much worse. They're so annoying. It is the lowest form. Like, you know, I think kids should deserve, like, really good stories. You know, this is why I love stuff like, I love the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. I love all 4 Toy Stories. Like, even the stuff Disney puts out now, with movies like Wreck-It Ralph, Zootopia, Frozen, all that stuff. Like, we are getting really good family movies. This is one of the lower ones that I think I've sat through. Though, speaking of bad animated movies, Ice Age Collision Course. The movie that pretty much had the entire Ice Age franchise jump the Mosasaur. Because, here's the thing. I like the first Ice Age. I think it's really, really good and actually kind of overlooked. And hell, I even like the second one. With the third one just... I thought the third one was alright. I didn't see the fourth one, and quite frankly, I don't know if I care. But with this one, with the whole idea of Scrag going up into space with... Like, the main characters are trying to figure out ways so they can stop their own extinction... is just, like, the biggest thing with this is that it has the similar problems with a sequel that, to a franchise that's overstayed its welcome. It starts referencing stuff from, like, our time. Like, you get a whole sequence that says, like, where the 2 possums go, like, hashtag this, hashtag that, and they're wondering what a hashtag is, which is stupid. There's a moment where Sid is trying to get with this other sloth, and she says, "You look nothing like you do on your profile picture." Just... You don't know what that is. And then a moment where Adam Devine voices Manny's daughter's fiance, and there's literally a moment where he sings that song, the Fall Out Boy song, My Songs Know What You Do, you know, light 'em up, I'm on fire. That's that song. Yeah. Like, I was able to let it pass in the second one when one of the possums sings, I Believe I Can Fly, or even when Sid does other songs that they shouldn't know. Like, that was at a time where I can actually kind of let that pass. Hell, even Shrek has done it like that a few times. But this is just, like, overkill at this point. Not only that, these characters are just, like, former shells of what they used to be. Like, Sid is a lot more annoying. Manny is just the traditional, like, husband archetype. Like... It's just... These characters aren't really what they used to be back then. If there's anything good I can say is that Scrat, as ridiculous as it is of him going up into space, is still one of the better moments of this movie. There's an entire one-shot sequence when we are reintroduced to the character of Buck. And I like Buck. But there's a whole one-shot sequence where he's pretty much singing Figaro in the dinosaur world. And it's like... It's animated like it's done one shot, and it's really good. Look it up. And that's actually the best part of the movie. It's not enough to save it, though, and there's a part of me that's like, Ice Age should really just end, in that so far we haven't gotten another sequel. Thankfully, in Blue Sky, it seems to be doing somewhat better with I've heard Spies in Disguise is really good. I didn't see it yet, but let's just hope that at this point Ice Age should probably get a rest. For 2017, I would put down... Now this, in my original list on DeviantArt, was number 2 on my worst stuff. Thinking about it more and more, this should definitely be number 1, The Snowman. Now, this is a movie that's based on, like, what I heard is a really great series of books, but the way they adapted it... first of all, they adapted the 7th book in the series, which I'm thinking, why adapt the 7th book of all things? I mean, sure, you can actually adapt, like, one book, and it can become its own thing. Let me look at Die Hard. But this, on the other hand, the biggest problem with the movie, and why I should have put it as number 1, the movie's unfinished. Like, they didn't get enough time to film certain scenes, they didn't get enough time to do all this, and it just felt rushed. Like, they've rushed it into production and put it out there for the whole world to see. And not only that, the acting is just not, like, interesting. Like, Michael Fassbender, and with a ridiculous name, like, a movie that's trying to be so serious, and his name is literally Harry Hole. Like, I'm not kidding, his name is Harry Hole. It's just so... And another big problem, like, and J.K. Simmons doing this ridiculous accent, like, he's trying, but the character is just written so poorly, and the movie is just completely boring. It's like, why should I care about this mystery if the movie is so dull? I mean, I think the closest thing I can definitely say is kind of worth it is that some of the kills, as ridiculous as it is, are kind of gruesome. And that poster where it says, like, you know, Mr. Police, like, if I just flashed on there, the Mr. Police poster, which it could seem effective, but it just comes off kind of silly. The Snowman is just a really god-awful movie. Speaking of god-awful, though, in terms of horror, Rings. Wow. Way to resurrect something from, like, a really good horror film like Ring. Like, The Ring. I didn't see Ring 2, and I heard that one wasn't good, but this is pretty much like every other bad horror movie where the main characters are so dumb. They are so stupid. They do all this stupid stuff. Like, they hold classes for this ring curse or whatever, and they outright, like, try to figure out, like, I like the whole idea of them trying to figure out the mystery of Samara, but it's not interesting at all. Like, they try to throw in, like, a lot of, like, these disturbing, like, art house kind of visuals to it, but it doesn't come off, like, scary or even, like, at all terrifying. And the ending, like, they get Vincent D'Onofrio to play a blind priest, and just to have the ending rip off a much better movie, Don't Breathe. It's just, and also, one big one, the trailer outright spoils the end of the movie, where the curse is now being spread online from the girl, and she becomes the next Samara. Like, the trailer outright shows you everything that's gonna happen. It's just, like, from what it could be, like, what, that was weird. For what could have been actually a really interesting reboot of this franchise turned into just another generic bad horror movie. Although in terms of other movies that try to go off another trend, Chips. This also came out around time, like, especially in 2012, we had the movie adaptation of 21 Jump Street. A movie that is an adaptation of an old cop show from back then, but done in, like, a more raunchy comedic way, and it was actually clever. Especially with the sequel, which pokes fun of, like, the whole concept of a repeat sequel, and it's really, really funny. And Chips is part of the reason why I couldn't get mad at Baywatch. Like, Baywatch, like, it wasn't that good of a movie, but that at least somewhat tried. Chips, on the other hand, was just, like, a collection of just unfunny, boring set pieces. Dax Shepard and Luis Guzman don't really have that much of chemistry. And Kristen Bell, baby, I love you, but you're not enough to save it, unfortunately. Chips was just an unfunny, like, of these whole poke fun of the TV show while adapting it, this one's probably the worst. Though, we have another direct-to-video movie that actually did get a release on Netflix, Bigger, Fatter, Liar. Now, with something like Paul Blart 2, and I'll ask you this, who asked for this? Who asked for a sequel to Big Fat Liar? I mean, I still like Big Fat Liar. That movie still holds up. But why do you need to do a sequel? Like, even if you can't get the original people back, and the movie is basically just a retread of the first movie with just only a few changes done to it. Instead of being made into a movie, it's a video game. And the main character, like, he's supposed to be kind of like what Frankie Muniz was, except he is way more unlikable. Like, he is just, like, he's an awful kid. He, like, even when he goes out to, like, mess with this guy, this new Marty Wolf, played by Barry Bostwick, he steals his phone. No, in the first one, he steals his phone. In this one, he steals his freaking credit card. It's like, that's not really being mischievous. That's just being a criminal. And the whole movie, like, unlike the first one, which, okay, we can say what we want about Dan Schneider now with all the crap he's done. He at least knew how to write comedy. Like, Big Fat Liar, even stuff like Drake and Josh, or even the first few seasons of iCarly are funny. This is just bland and just unfunny. Like, the whole things just to mess with him are just really unfunny. Bigger Fat Liar is one of those sequels that honestly shouldn't really exist, but hey, it's just a name to make money, I guess. I mean, who else can we expect from the guys who made stuff like Kindergarten Cop 2, Granddaddy Daycare, The Benchwarmers 2 for some reason? A lot of direct-to-video sequels, and people said Disney was bad at it. Alright, now we move on to 2018. We are near the home stretch. And speaking of unfunny comedies, here's one I didn't see, but I gave it a shot to see how bad it was, and my god, they were right. Holmes and Watson. I love Will Ferrell. I love John C. Reilly. And when you put them together, they can make some really funny movies. Like, I love Talladega Nights. I unironically love Step Brothers. Where did this go wrong? Like, I don't mind like a whole parody done of the Sherlock Holmes story, but the whole movie, like, you know, maybe people criticize comedies nowadays, and normally I wouldn't agree because some of them can, it's hard to ad-lib. Like, I went to an acting class in community college about acting, and one of our last assignments was ad-libbing, and it's hard, like, to make up stuff on the fly. And people who can do it can really do it. I mean, Robin Williams has done it many times. Even movies, like, even there's some that can actually have the entire movie be ad-libbed. Like, a more recent example, from what I heard, Thor Ragnarok, while the script was written, and even parts of the script made into the movie, a lot of the movie was actually ad-libbed, and it was really funny. This, Holmes and Watson, was just nothing but a collection of screaming, annoying humor, like, references out of nowhere. Like, they do a whole ghost reference, like, just out of nowhere. And speaking of out of nowhere, there was a song sequence in the movie written by Alan Menken, which I'm like, did we really need a musical sequence in this? Like, Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly spent most of the movie just being annoying, screaming. It's just, like, really unfunny, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed and that we're finally getting that Guy Ritchie, Sherlock Holmes, Robert Downey Jr. sequel, finally. And I just hope it's gonna be way better than this. And then we got and then we have Gotti, which, I talked about a little bit about it when I talked about The Fanatic in my worst of 2019. The Fanatic's bad, but it was hilariously bad. Gotti's bad, but it is boring. Like, this is a movie that is so boring, I just straight up didn't care. Like, the movie is supposedly based on a true story about this mafia boss named Gotti, and it is just, like, the whole thing, it's one of those where it's like, you don't really care what's going on. It's like one of those movies you could put on just for background noise. Like, you wouldn't care at all. John Travolta and his wife, Kelly Preston, are in this and doing the most stereotypical of Italian accents you'll ever hear. Like, even Mario would kind of be offended at it. Even to a point where they just start listing off stuff like spaghetti, pizza, and stuff like that. Like, no joke. And you get probably one of the most weirdest one. A movie set in the 80s. Like, they're having a party, and they start playing a Pitbull song. Like, what decade does this movie take place? Gotti's just boring bad. You'll forget about it in a day or two. Speaking of boring, though, here's another boring horror film, Slender Man. This was another movie that kind of felt few years too late to do a movie about the Slender Man. And much like with Gotti, this is a movie that you straight up just don't care. It's not really much Slender Man, but more or less rips off The Ring. And while I'll give it credit, it's slightly less insulting than something like Rings. It is just still a boring, like, mess that it's one of those movies you leave on for the background and just go about your day, like look at your email or go to the bathroom or something like that. And this is another one also like with Winchester, which is just generic. And this is also on my list. Winchester is also very generic and boring, but at least has somewhat of an interesting idea behind it. Slender Man was just a boring, like, this is a movie that you just don't care and felt a little too late to make, honestly. And of course, like, around 2018, Show Dogs. When you thought Raja Gosnell couldn't stoop lower than something like Smurfs 2, this is one of them. Like, though unlike when he did Beverly Hills Chihuahua, which it was just nothing either, that wasn't a good movie either, but Beverly Hills Chihuahua was more forgettable. Show Dogs was more, like, it's memorably bad. Like, the god-awful CG on the dogs' mouths, like, probably one of the most infamous moments, the implication of breeding, which is just weird, or grooming, which is just odd, even for a family movie. The baby panda, which is supposed to be cute. Like, baby pandas are cute. This thing looks like the butt-ugly CG offspring of the Kung Fu Panda costume from Disaster Movie. It's really bad. Like, it's just your average, like, bad. It's kind of like in the same vein of Pulp Lord 2, where it's just so bad and just amusingly bad that you're just wondering, like, why was this even made? It's crazy. Alright, now we're on to the home stretch. I've talked about these movies since for 2019. I have 3 because, like I mentioned, one I talked about was so bad that I don't think it deserves any attention. If you want to know what that is, just watch my worst of 2019. But I'll quickly go over these. Dark Phoenix was one where I feel like the X-Men franchise could have ended stronger than this. And hopefully New Mutants can end it stronger, maybe more than this. But this is just a movie that I just think is very boring and forgettable. The acting's fine, and even the effects. But it is just such a boring, lifeless film. Wonder Park. Now, I don't really hate Wonder Park. Like, I'm not angry about it. But this is a movie that I think kind of teaches a little bit of wrong messages for kids. Like, ball up your emotions, or, like I said, it's like a reverse Inside Out. You should ball up your emotions. Or at least, it's a movie that's just devoid of any kind of wonder, ironic for a movie called Wonder Park. And then we also have The Haunting of Sharon Tate to end it off. A movie that is so insultingly bad for being just a generic horror film with an insulting ending. Hilary Duff, I am so sorry for even doing a part of this. And he's even heard that, I just recently saw Double Toasted's video that the director did another bad one, The Murder of Nicole Brown Smith, which I heard is bad, like, almost as bad as this, and I don't know if I'll be checking it out this year. And that was that. Those were my worst movies of the decade, and it's done something to me, like, it just made my brain melt. Tune in next time. I'm gonna at least have more energy to do my best of the decade. Though I want to ask, what are your worst movies of the decade? Listen down in the comments below. I'm curious to hear what everyone has to say. Well, anyway, thank you all for watching. This is Clayton, signing out.